Howdy, folks. This is Ted Lasso, your favorite optimistic American football coach turned English football coach. And welcome to the Richmond Way, a Ted Lasso rewatch podcast. So grab your biscuits, put on your AFC Richmond scarf, and let's embark on this journey together.
Whistle! Whistle!
Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Richmond Way. As with me, per usual, those words are not in the correct order. I'm talking like Yoda for some reason. Is the voiceover superhero Bonnie Marie Williams.
Hello.
Hello, Bonnie. Mike sends his regards. He is dealing with computer issues today, so he is not here. But we do have a very special guest with us today, who is Mr. Paul Cripps. Thank you for joining us, Paul.
Hello.
Welcome to the Richmond Way. We appreciate you coming to join us today.
Thank you very much for asking me.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so for people that may not know, you were the production designer for the series Ted Lasso. And for people that are like watching or listening that like don't know necessarily what all that entails, like basically what is the role of a production designer? What do they do? How closely do you work with like other departments during like pre-production and during production, like when you're on, whether it's a show like this or a film or whatever else it may be?
Well, basically the production designer's role is to be responsible for the look of everything that you see in any frame of a film or TV show, anything in the frame that basically isn't the actors. So I'm not responsible for costume and makeup, but I'm kind of responsible along with other people, but I'm the main person responsible for the look of the show. So I deal in everything from locations, sets, vehicles, graphics, decor, so furniture and interior design and of both sets and locations, and exterior locations as well. So and strange things like firearms, all this kind of stuff, all props and hand props, pretty much everything that isn't the actors themselves. And I work in tandem with a whole crew of people. I have quite a big crew usually on a show. And I also work in tandem with the other kind of heads of departments, so the costume designer, makeup designer, the DOP, the director of photography, the cameraman, sound, visual effects, special effects, all these. I have to liaise with everybody basically. But often the production designer is the first person on a production. Sometimes before the director even. I come on board, which was the case with Ted Lasso. I was on before any of the directors. So I'm at an early stage planning, trying to work out what will be shot on a set, on a stage, or what will be location and how the whole show is going to look and work, both from a practical and a visual point of view.
Nice.
So it's quite a big job.
Yeah. Well, I bet it's fun though too, just because like you're getting to create like all of this stuff that didn't exist before you got there.
Yeah, I mean it's exciting. It can be stressful. It's often a lot of work, which is why I have a big team and I try and kind of hand out as much work as I can to everybody, so everybody's involved and everybody. I have specific people who concentrate on specific bits of the design. So I have like graphic designers who deal with all the graphics, and I have a set decorator who would go out and do furniture and decor and props. I have a prop master who deals with all the kind of hand props and getting, all the furniture and everything to either the stages and the sets or to locations. And I also have an on-set team because I'm hardly ever on set. I tend to work ahead, so we would kind of jump ahead every day. So we would set up a location or a set the day before, and then the crew, the shooting crew, would come to it the next day on the shooting day. I would kind of be there first thing in the morning to see them in and check it. They're happy with everything. And then I go on to the next day's stuff. So I'm setting up the next day while they're shooting this day. And then when they've finished and they go to the next day, we go back and we clear up if we need to, if it's a location. And we also take everything down, so it's an ongoing process, and I'm working ahead of the shooting crew. And usually if I get called to set, it's normally because something's gone wrong, to be quite honest. Or it's the end of the time I get to be on set is normally the end of a production when I'm not prepping other stuff, so I can actually spend some time on set. But it's I have an on-set team who are like a team of 3 or 4 who are there all the time with the shooting crew to make sure that my bit, everything looks great, and that we've set up things correctly for the directors and the actors.
Nice. So like with that, so like for like a work, like for work on like a series like Ted Lasso, does your process change for anything, like in any way or like when compared to like other things that you've worked on, like either as like an art director in the past or like a production designer? So like if it's like a sci-fi film, or if it's like, like a comedy drama like this or something high concept, does it change at all, or just pretty much kind of like the same process?
It's normally the same process. I mean, it's quite an interesting thing because like doing science fiction or doing like modern day football club, you still do a load of research. You're either researching real things or you're researching, other science fiction. You're looking at, real science and real spaceships or whatever. But even if you're doing a period job, what we call period jobs, set in previous times, you would still do research. So you want to get it as correct as possible to the period you're doing or the contemporary feel. I mean, I sometimes think contemporary is harder because we all know what things look like now, and if you don't do it correctly, especially if you're doing another country, if I'm doing something in LA or something, American designers doing something in, Norwich in England, you really need to research to get it right, because people are so visually they're so visually good these days that people can spot mistakes quite easily. So that research is the starting point of any job, really. You read the script, hopefully you'll have more than a couple, but sometimes we just start with one, and you have to kind of research as much as you can and understand the world so that you can try and build the world and get it right. And you might go to specialists, you might ask people, research people who work in those areas. I mean, for Ted Lasso, I think I went to nearly every Premier League football ground in London, and some that were kind of more like championship teams, just to find out I had a vague idea of what football teams look like in their training area or in their, in their offices and stuff. But we managed to get into quite a few and do tours and have a look around and just filter through lots of interesting elements that we could add into Ted Lasso, into Richmond AFC. And then it was a case of building that club from scratch, looking at other teams, what colors should they play in, what should their badge be, what's their history. I almost kind of wrote a fantasy backstory for the whole club. So you do that in order to make it feel like it's got depth of design and people kind of believe it more. And if you can make it believable, I always felt my job on Ted Lasso was to kind of keep things real. The comedy comes from the people, the characters, the dialogue, rather than us kind of, it's not a send up of the world. It's a real world, and people have to believe in the drama part of the story,
right?
For the comedy to work, I think. So my job, I felt like my job was undercutting it with a kind of reality that it does feel right. I mean, occasionally we were allowed to have a little bit of fun, but mostly I tried to keep it real. And I think the most important thing to me was to make it feel like it did feel like a lower position, but a Premier League team, and make that feel believable, because we've had a few football dramas in the UK and they've not been great. And to me, they always seemed like I didn't really believe that it was a real club. And that put me off from the start. And I didn't want people to feel like that from the start. I wanted them to go and think, oh, okay, this feels like a proper club. And then you bring in the kind of crazy elements or the comedy elements.
Something more grounded. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And hearing you explain that just makes me go, oh yeah, that does check out. Like just thinking about the show and what you had said about that. I think that's great. I always like to ask people, what do you love about what you do? Like, what do you love the most about what you do?
I think I really like fooling people. It's quite fun when people say, oh my God, was that a set? Or was that, oh, that was a real location, and it's a little bit like doing magic, I think. And when people realize that you've tricked them and it's not a real space, or it's, you've created something, they're just amazed by it. And there's a real beauty in that. And I think it's funny, a lot of performers and actors have an interest. I know Jason and Nick Mohammed are both magicians. They love magic. And there is something about that which is similar in terms of the TV world, that if you can, I've done shows where it's set somewhere, but we don't shoot there. But if you have to try and make people believe that all the things that are happening in that city. Like we shot a show in Brighton. I don't know if you know Brighton. It's a small seaside town on the south coast of England. But we were shooting in London, and we could only go to Brighton like a couple of days every block of the show. But we built a journey into the first episode, so it felt like you were walking all down these streets and you ended up at the pier on the seafront. And we did that, every other episode. And people just bought into the fact that all the other locations were in Brighton, but they weren't. They were all in London. And that's kind of, I mean, if you know the location, obviously it's not fooling you, but there's a way that your brain kind of takes a leap of faith and goes along with that, which is really interesting in a way. And how your brain can still be, you can allow your brain to fool you, even though you probably know it's not real.
Yeah.
We all know that the House of Dragons, dragons don't exist, but we want to believe that.
Mark, you took my line.
But you want to buy into that. I mean, why do we sit and watch that thing about, I used to do a show called Merlin, which was, I don't know if I think it was in America on BBC America.
Yeah. It was. Yeah.
But we had some complaints from the series I did that, and it was on BBC, and BBC have this kind of program where it's a right to reply, where viewers can complain about a show and go on. And our producer had to go on because they were complaining that we'd used tomatoes in one of the feast scenes, and he was saying, well, tomatoes hadn't been discovered. They were discovered, in the Americas and then brought back. And our producer said, well, there weren't dragons either, but nobody's complained about the dragon. It's like a believability thing, but it's suspending your belief like you do in the theatre. And I think that kind of idea of suspension of disbelief is that's what's really interesting. And I got it at an early age because there was a lot of filming in our town, and 1 week it would be like a World War II film, and you'd go out and the town had been dressed like a French occupied town, a German occupied French town rather. And the next day, we had Mel Brooks doing History of the World Part 1 and did the whole French Revolution section in the stately home near us. And you go there and it's, they had a guillotine in the center of the big courtyard, and it's that kind of magic was something I kind of saw at an early age as a kid, and I really loved that. And I think that's what's drawn me into it. I mean, I didn't say at that point I wanted to work in film and TV because I didn't know how. But I think eventually, that has had something that's driven me on this kind of journey.
Wow.
Nice.
That's terrific.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I think everyone like that does like work in like film or TV in some way has some kind of origin story like that, where there's like that like thing that you watched or read or listened to that like set off like a switch in your mind or whatever, and you're like, all right, that's what I'm meant to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also probably watched far too much TV as a kid, went to too many films, and I was quite solitary as a child, and I used to just watch television. But it has stood me in good stead for working with Jason, because Jason is he's like a TV culture kind of fanatic. So he did all these things, and also his uncle is in Cheers, so he knows American TV and all those comedies, but he would send me stuff, and I knew all that stuff because I'd spent so much time watching comedies that obviously he'd watched, although I'm older than him, but it kind of fed in, and I understood the elements he was trying to bring in with that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
I needed help with some of the American ideas, because some of the things are cultural things that we don't get, and they didn't get stuff here, so we were always kind of helping each other with that.
That makes sense.
That's terrific.
You'd brought up the badge earlier, so I wanted to show you this really quick. So, kind of made like a like a homage to the Earl Greyhound badge. So
great.
like this is my mini Schnauzer Sylvie, and I do like audio for stuff, so I just had it sort of switched it a little bit, so she's holding a boom mic and has headphones on.
Excellent.
But just because I love the show so much.
Well, I gave Jason 2 options on the badge, because being Richmond, the other thing we could have done was I kind of did 2 ideas, which was one was where it was a deer. We have a deer park in Richmond, which is like a royal park, and it's renowned for that. So we had a choice of a deer or the Richmond Greyhound, which is the old symbol of the person who built a palace in Richmond. Richmond is actually named after the Richmond, which is in the north of England in a county called Yorkshire. So that is Richmond, and we're Richmond upon Thames. But the symbol for that guy, his kind of heraldic symbol, was a greyhound. And so I gave Jason 2 options, and he went for the greyhound. I think somewhere he went to college has a similar kind of symbol, and he liked the idea of it being a dog pound and the elements within it. So we went with that one, and then we kind of finalized that kind of badge, because a lot of the teams have kind of crests over here, which are quite old, but have changed over the generations, but generally have been the same.
Yeah, it's definitely a very recognizable, like now, like thing, like you see that, you're like, oh, that's Ted Lasso, that's AFC Richmond, like, so it's definitely a great design for it. And like, kind of speaking of that, like when you started working on the show, like what was your kind of like initial vision for like what the like aesthetic would kind of be for like the show, like, and how did you kind of collaborate with Jason and Brendan and everybody else with like kind of to bring like that vision to life for the show?
I mean, initially it was very patchy in a way, because the guys only came over for like a week, a couple of days of recceing or scouting, as you guys call it, for locations. So I think I did a few days with Bill, the producer, and then a few days with Jason, and we chose Richmond out of some other towns and places we'd looked at. And then literally they went back to LA because they'd only written like a couple of episodes, so they had to go back and write it. And then I didn't see them again until about 2 weeks before we started shooting. So it was all done via kind of the internet and done via emails. And to be honest, they were quite busy and they never got back to me. So a lot of the decisions I made, I just had to go, right, we're doing this. Is this okay? So it was a little bit scary when they came back, because obviously I sent them stuff, but they'd not really seen a lot of it in the flesh. So luckily it worked out. But my initial idea was to base it around Leicester City, who are a Premier League, or were at that point a Premier League team, who were an underdog team, quite a low team, who had managed to win the Premier League. And it felt like that kind of story. I didn't know if Richmond were going to win the Premier League. I didn't know whether they would or not. but it seemed the idea that they were underdogs, but there was a way of building a team in the Leicester way. So I looked a lot at Leicester City, and Leicester they play in blue. There's a lot of blue, but like the locker room, they have those slogans. They had a lot of slogans in their locker room, and so it was partly Leicester City, and then also we were being allowed to use Crystal Palace's football ground, Selhurst Park, and that's another Premier League team, but again, another lowly kind of. It's not one of the the teams that do well all the time. Right. So we were using those stadiums, so we had to fit in quite a bit with them. So that's why Richmond became red and blue, because the whole of the Crystal Palace Stadium is red and blue seating. So it was kind of slightly designed by that in a way. So those were the two main clubs that I kind of based it on, and then we got the badge, and then things just grew, and you start building a world really, and things start to. There was a bit of difficulty actually, because the thing about a Premier League team is you have a training centre, which is not at your stadium, which is somewhere else, and you probably have a locker room there, and then you have a locker room where you go out and play at your stadium. And we had this thing where we couldn't really build two locker rooms in different places and make them seem like they were different places. So we had to have one locker room that worked for training as well as for the pitch. So mentally, I built this idea that the locker room was in the bowels of the stadium. Rebecca's office. Rebecca's office was in the stadium, but the windows looked out over the training pitch, and the training pitch was next to the stadium. So I built this whole mental kind of map, and I sent it to everybody, because all these different sets are so disparate. Like when they're watching the game, we have to build an executive box, and they're over the training pitch. They're not on the real pitch, so they have to be told which way to look, and all this kind of stuff. So I built all this mental map, but it's quite difficult, because when we first got the VisFX back for the first series, the guys hadn't put the stadium in the background of the training pitch. So it's like, oh God, how does that work? But nobody seems to care. Only I seem to care about that. So I just kind of went, okay, well, it is what it is. But it is a bit strange that there's only one locker room, but it works really well as a set. So you just kind of buy into it and go for it. But there are elements that don't quite fit together if you really think about them.
Yeah. I don't know. That's that willing suspension of disbelief, though, because I didn't even think about that. And
I worried about that for weeks. It's like. Yeah. But that's the thing you worry about. You worry about the things that perhaps nobody else is interested in. But that's the way of the job.
Wow, I would have had no idea. And this is the thing is, I've typically been on the actor side of things most of my life, and now I'm working more on the production side of things. So I'm learning more about how everything else works, because people think. And this is not to diminish actors' credits to things, but people think it's like actors, but there's so many more people than there are actors typically on a show to make it happen. And that's why I love these interviews and talking with people who are the ones to make sure the actors have a place to play. Like, actors can only go up, but if they don't have a stage, if they don't have lights, if they don't have a camera, if they don't have this, who are they talking to? Who's the audience? So that's why I think this is so interesting to hear about how you had to come up with this idea of how do I make this work logistically, and how is it going to work on screen, and how all of that works into what everybody else contributes to the show. And I think it's just really terrific to hear you talking about how it was challenging, and with the communication, you just kind of had to go, okay, this is what it is, hope for the best, and you pulled it off, and it was terrific. Like, I wouldn't have known how intricate you really had to go and make it in order for it to be successful. And I think it was terrific.
Yeah. I think to be honest, I think even if I got some things wrong, the scripts were so good that it would have been a success anyway. I think lockdown really helped as well, because I think people were looking for something that was going to make them feel good. So I think that really helped. But I think, I remember reading the first script when I did an interview with Jason, like a video interview with Jason and Bill Lawrence, and I'd read the script and I was just like, I so wanted to do it because it's just so funny. It's just, and the characters are so good, and that was all there on the page day one. So, whatever I do, it doesn't really matter as long as the scripts are really good. And yes, we have a lot of people working on it. Our Ted Lasso crew was like 200 people every day, and a bit more in the background. But, if the script is not up to it, it's never going to be a great show. And their scripts were really good. And they had such a good way of working writer's room that it still amazes me how they do it. And all the callbacks and comebacks in different series. It's just brilliant. And I just think a gifted group of people came together to write that. And I think the scripts are one of the, if not the biggest thing to make it, really. Because I think about that and defining those characters. I mean, they're all great actors, of course. They're all fun and they're all weird in their own way, But I think that it's the scripts that gel those disparate people together and make it work so well.
Yeah.
Hats off to the writers' room.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
And so you'd already talked a little bit about the stadium and like Rebecca's office and whatnot. With the crown and anchor, how much of that was already kind of like what the Princess Head looked like? I know at least like the exterior is basically as is, but was there like anything on the inside of the Princess Head that you kind of brought into like the design of what the crown and anchor would be for that?
Ooh.
Well, the crown and anchor interior is an almost exact copy of the Prince's Head. So basically, what happened was the tables outside the Prince's Head where they sing "Hey Jude." But basically, that was the last staging point on both recce's with Bill Lawrence and with Jason and Brendan. That's on Jason and Brendan's recce, that's where they decided they wanted to use Richmond. When we were sat outside the Prince's Head having a pint before they went to the airport. The airport's not that far from Richmond. So it was the last stop. But they liked it. They really liked it. And so they also wanted to use the pub. Now, Bill wanted to shoot in the pub for the first episode, because he's used to doing pilots in America. So you would shoot there. Then if it works and whatever, then you would build a set later on.
Right.
But so he said, recreate the pub. We'll shoot the first episode in the pub and then we'll continue on in the set. But actually, the way the schedule worked out, I built the pub. I built it a tiny bit bigger than the actual pub because you need space for camera. And in series 2, because of COVID, we had to enlarge it, although hopefully you can't tell. But we never shot in the interior of the real pub in the end. We only shot on the set. So we shot the outside of the pub in the real location, but all the scenes inside are in our set in the studio. But it's pretty similar. And if you come to Richmond and you go in the pub, you'll see how similar it is.
I did do that when I went out to visit on the tour. I did the Ted Lasso tour, and I got to sit and I had fish and chips, and it was delightful.
Well, there you go. We were a bit worried about the pub because a lot of pubs were closing during COVID in the second series, and I was really worried that the brewery that owns it was closing a lot of its pubs because it was struggling a bit financially because of COVID. And when they first started opening, people weren't really going back into pubs. So I gave some memorabilia to the pub, which they've hung on the walls, which in order to hopefully keep them open, because for them to close, I couldn't work out whether it would be better for us or worse, because, obviously, but I didn't know who would buy it, and then they might change it. And so I wanted them to keep going. So they're doing pretty well now. And a lot of the pubs in Richmond are doing really well, but they've got the photos up that I gave them and a shirt and stuff. So
Nice.
But it's nice every time I walk through Richmond. Yes, so those are the photos.
Yeah, that's when I was there. And then is that
Yeah.
also?
Yeah. So I
Amazing.
gave them a shirt and I gave them I got Jason to sign a photo for them, just really because I wanted it to stay open and make sure we still had that location. Seems crazy now, but
Nice.
oh, there you go. Yeah. But
That's so cool.
Yeah, I live near Richmond actually, and I walk through quite often, and I see so many people doing the tour or walking through and having their photo taken. So it's quite strange for me just wandering through there, and it seems to have massively increased the footfall in Richmond as well, which is amazing, really.
Yeah, I saw they built
that.
a store that's like across the alleyway from what used to be or was Ted's apartment, which I'm not sure. I'm assuming isn't probably like an official store.
I think it's official in that it's. I think they've bought a license from Warner Brothers, so
okay,
it's Warner Brothers stuff. I don't think they can sell the Nike kit and stuff like that.
All right.
I mean, Jason was very fond of the little shops down there who would sell their own version of the gear as well. But I mean, I hope it doesn't force them out of business or whatever. But there's some nice people down those alleyways, and they were always really helpful when we were shooting down there. Although towards the end of the series, whenever we shot there, there was a lot of people turning up to watch, which made it quite difficult. So they were pretty patient with us, to be honest. So, but yeah, it's still nice to go down and see that people are still touring around and seeing those elements.
Mm-hmm. I had a great time when I went. It was a little rainy, but I mean, it was still, we don't get a lot of rain in LA. So it was like, oh, what is this? But it was really, really just, you walk around and you're like, this is so cute. This is great. And it feels magical. And there was a lot to do, and I had a great time. And there was a shop right across from his apartment with this cute Italian couple in the tailor shop. Yeah, they were so lovely. And it was just, it must be really cool that you just get to see people reliving the magic that you helped to create. And it's just, and my friend who was the tour guide, she's my friend now, but she was the tour guide first, and now she's my friend, talks about how it's kind of put a little pep in the step with people there. And I think that's terrific. And it feels magical is really the only way that I can describe it. So that's so cool. That's so cool that like you're walking around and people don't know that you were somebody that helped make it happen. That must be wild.
Yeah, it's funny. It's also because Apple isn't as prevalent here. Not when we first started showing them, not that many people had Apple TV. But now it's growing more and more, and people like getting it for a couple of months or whatever, and just watching stuff. So occasionally I still get popping up on my phone, some friends is like, oh my God, I just watched Ted Lasso for the first time. It's like 2 years later or 3 years later. Oh, it's amazing, and so it's a gift that keeps giving. I mean,
I'm sure now the Blu-ray and DVD set came out. Both in the US and UK, that'll probably even push it up even further.
Even more. Yeah, I'll probably get some more messages. But it's really lovely because everybody seems to love it. And it's really lovely to be a part of that good feeling in a way. And that doesn't seem to go away, which is good, because sometimes you work on shows and sometimes perhaps people get a bit, bored of them, or it goes the wrong way for them. But it seems to have worked out, even though, some people were a little bit unhappy in Series 3, but it was such a difficult thing to get right. I think Jason really struggled with it. He was really worried about getting it right for both him, but also not upsetting the fans. I think he it caused us a few delays in a way, because he really wanted to get it right, and for no other reason than that. He was intent on doing it so it was a good ending and it felt right to him. Maybe wasn't what all the fans wanted, but it was the idea that him, Brendan, and Joe had all those years ago, and seemed to make it right.
Because we've seen how fans can turn very quickly on a project if they don't like the ending or the last few episodes, and we all know what I'm talking about. And I can only imagine the pressure that must be under. But I think if you go into it like we have to try to make every single fan happy, you're going to make nobody happy. And I think it ended beautifully.
I think that's something that bears out. I think it's HBO who always had that idea that they just ignored the audience and they did what they wanted to do with shows, and I think it's kind of right in a way, because I think Jason stuck with the ideas that he always had when he first started it. And Brendan and Joe, they're a creative team and they knew exactly what they wanted to do over 3 seasons. And that's why we don't have a 4th season. I'm not saying there won't ever be, but at the moment that was a whole story and that's what they always intended to tell, and they told it. I don't think they expected it to be as successful as it was, right. But who knows? They might want to do some more. And I think if he finds the right idea and a way of, creating ideas so he knows where the ending is, I don't think he's going to start something and just go with it because it's making another one. I think he wants to tell a story with an end, a middle, and a beginning, a middle, and an end. But he might well do it again, but I don't know. But I think he stood to what they always thought they wanted to do, and I think that was really important.
Yeah, that set's even smart about how it's like worded, where it's just called Ted Lasso, the Richmond way. And on the back, it says a 3-season compilation. Doesn't say anything about it being a complete series anywhere. So it's very smart in how it's wording what that set is, and that it's not like a complete series. I was like, I like that it's called the Richmond way. That'll help people find this podcast too.
SEO, baby.
Decided that. That's a Warner's release, so I don't know who was involved in doing that. So it may have been Jason and the boys, but I don't know.
Yeah. So like you kind of talked about like some of like the challenges, like as you were prepping stuff before like we really started shooting. Was there like any challenges like what was the maybe like the biggest challenge you had over those 3 series that had been filmed while designing the sets for the show? And was there anything that you had built and ended up having to scrap, or
not really? I mean, it's always a bit of a worry when you start, because normally in a series you might only have 1 or 2 sets and you have to decide what's going to be important and what you're going to build, and some things might be underused, or something halfway through completely changes and you've got to build something else. So I mean, every set has its own challenges. We had a slight challenge in the restaurant in the end of season 2, the scene where Tahib's character Sam gets taken to a restaurant after they visited the museum and seen Banksy, which was a joke that they tried to get in, which caused a few problems. But they went to this restaurant, and then we had to pick a location that was close to the museum we were using. We were going to use the Tate Modern, big art gallery in London, but the Tate Modern didn't want anything to do with Banksy, so they wanted us to take the Banksy joke out. But Jason and the boys didn't want to, so we then went to another. We went to the Natural History Museum, and then we put the art in digitally to keep the Banksy joke and the gag, and which I thought was quite good as well. Yeah. So we had to pick a location for the restaurant that was very close to the museum. Now, sometimes when you do that and it's a one-off location, you suddenly don't realize that it's going to become a major thing in the last episode, where Sam has gone back and bought the restaurant, and then it's in most of series 3. So I had to basically build the restaurant again and reproduce it. Oh, you've got a matchbox. Yeah. Oh, very good. So we had to build that whole set and base it on the restaurant that we shot on location. and it's a very small restaurant, and it's not what I would have chosen had I known that we were going to do a lot of shooting in series 3. But we couldn't change it, and that's a nice thing in that we tried to keep the continuity. So that was a bit of a headache, I have to say.
And kind of with that too, like the show is like, it's got such a like attention to detail. Was there like anything you had to like subtly like design into like elements of like any of the sets to like, I know it's like kind of part of it, like with the props is like there's the Wizard of Oz pinball machine in the Crown and Anchor, or just like these other little like subtle like things throughout different parts of the set. Was there anything that was kind of like fun to kind of like hide in there for you, or was that stuff more that you had to like work with?
I mean, there's lots of stuff. I mean, those particular things you mentioned are Jason's things. So he always wanted the pinball machine to be the Wizard of Oz, and I had to find that in the UK. But luckily, he had a contact for the pinball guy in the UK. I don't know quite how that happened, but he's very happy with that. And he also wanted the same picture of an American chief in the Crown and Anchor that Ted Danson takes down when they close Cheers, which is a nod to his uncle Norm. And there are little elements that we slipped in. I mean, there's lots. All the other characters, like the footballers, names of people that Jason and Joe and Brendan know, or their loved ones. And so there are elements that you build in. I mean, I can't remember them all. It's been a while since I've thought about it. But yeah, it's kind of nice to throw those kind of things in, because they become like Easter eggs. And, it's nice if somebody connects them up, and they also had that thing of repeating stuff. They would bring stuff back. We quite enjoyed as an art department making Nate's boxes that he collects money in, and it was always a job that we gave to the kind of the youngest, newest members of the art department, so they could, Jason would say, we need Nate to have made a box. He's made it with his niece, so they would just go off and sit in a corner with crafts and do all these crazy boxes, and that was a nice thing that we did every season, as it were. Right. I'm just trying to think of some of the other ones that we got in terms of. I can't remember. Sorry.
No, that's all good.
There is an Easter egg still around the outside of the Prince's Head in Richmond, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. You have to find it.
I'm over here like, did I see it and I didn't know? Oh boy. Okay.
No, I really.
All right, Mark, you go this time. Yeah, it's your turn. You go this time.
I still need to make that.
Quite hard to find. Nobody has ever found it. So.
Oh, well then I definitely probably didn't.
You won't have seen it, I don't think. But
oh, well, that's something I can tell my friend, the tour guide, to look for. Be like, hey, I was told.
Yeah, I was going to say she has the most likelihood of going by it the most often.
Probably, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's who. Okay. Well, I know who I'm reaching out to later. Saying, little birdie told me.
Well, with, I guess, speaking of boxes, that's a weird segue. Like with like Nate's like boxes that he made, like was that like a very specific choice for the biscuits box, like pink boxes? Like was that like your choice? Was that Jason's choice, or was that just like, or did it seem like an unimportant thing at the time to like make them look how they looked, and then it became like a whole?
No, well, it was important because it was part of the gag that we didn't know that Ted was making them every night. Okay, so that was part of a character thing for Ted. So it shows how much he cares because he's actually making the biscuits. But we wanted to make them seem like they come from a shop. So I can't remember who suggested the pink box. It was probably Jason. It was probably one of the writing team. But that's the reason that they're there, because it was part of the thing that he's given her these boxes and she just thinks it's a gift. These are amazing biscuits. And she sends Higgins off on a kind of spy hunt to try and find out where they're from. and then it pays off later that actually, Ted's made them himself, and makes them every night. I mean, but I think that is why that came about. And then they just stayed as this kind of iconic little pimp box. Hannah didn't like the biscuits when we first made them. Although we did get a proper what we call a home economist, who is a proper chef, to make them. But they got better, I think. Maybe they're just not her type of thing. But I take my hat off to her, because she's had to eat a lot of things in that show. She's often eating things, and I don't know whether she really wanted to eat a lot of those things, but she was a real trooper for doing that. And it made me think a lot of Brad Pitt, who's always eating a lot in scenes, which I quite like. But yeah, it's not easy to eat food on set, because obviously some of the time it's hanging around a lot, and you probably wouldn't want to eat it. You often tell extras just to push the food around their plate in the background.
Yeah.
But we do have proper chefs, making the fish and chips and all that kind of stuff, which is quite a big part of it. But yeah, I think the pink box was probably a Jason idea.
Nice.
I had a Twinkie that lasted a few Twinkies when I was in a production of Grease. And I think one of them, I was vegan at the time. So I was like, it's fine. My character's not vegan. It's like, well, this is all artificial crap anyway. So I think I made that. I took very, very small bites out of it. And some of my friends came to see me and they're like, she's dying inside, trying not to having to pretend she's eating this thing. But I think I had one Twinkie last the first week of the show, and then the second one last the second. I was like, I'm going to act like I like this. But yeah, it's not always fun on that side of things.
We often try and make things vegan anyway, because it's safer, really. Trying also, it was a whole scene where there were chicken kebabs or sheesh. It's that suddenly came up, and you read these things and you go, oh God, you got to keep chicken kebabs going for a whole episode, because then it'll bring them back to the locker room, and it's like, oh God. But it's your job. You got to do it. But food is not food. Food is funny. Food is a funny thing, because sometimes it can be really interesting. I've done period shows where I've gone back and researched old menus and stuff, and that is just so interesting. But then also, you've got to do evening meals for a family at home, and it's just like, oh God, what are we going to do? It's spaghetti bolognese again, because that's easy one to replicate. But it's not an easy thing to do. Food.
I bet that was fun for whoever did the production design for the show Friday Night Dinner. the show just revolves around.
Do you guys get that show? That's one of my favorite shows.
I watched it just because I searched it out, because I really liked Simon Bird, because I had watched the In-Betweener, so I actively searched it out, and I had someone bring me back a DVD set of it from the UK when they went there, so that I could.
It's so good, that show.
That's a good Friday Night Dinner, good show. If anyone hasn't checked it out, it's about a Jewish family, but there is a Christmas special for the show, which is the funniest thing about the show, is that it's a Jewish family that has a Christmas special. So,
listen, Jews write the best Christmas songs.
Yeah, that's right.
That's probably true.
Adam Sandler. No, wait.
Yeah, that one.
I guess one of the last things before I kind of wrap out for you is, because I don't want to take all your time today, was you got a recognition as a nomination for your work on Ted Lasso. So how did that feel to receive a nomination for your, both personally and kind of professionally, to get recognized for all the hard work that you did for the show?
It felt amazing. I mean, I got 3 consecutive nominations, and I even got one in the third year, because the first 2 years we were in the half-hour category, so we were up against things like Hacks and was it Only Murders in the Building and What We Do in the Shadows. You know, I love all those shows. But the third one was in the hour category, and we were up against The Last of Us. You know, and it's like, well, I got a nomination there, and I still got a nomination. I was just so amazed. And what's really lovely is that it's comedy drama, and here for the BAFTAs, you are highly unlikely to get nominated for production design for a comedy or a comedy drama. It's really period shows and high concept dramas that get nominated. So for me, it was absolutely amazing. And also for my team. I mean, it's not just me, it's for the whole team. I have a big team, and it was just such a nice thing to say, you know, well done, everybody. You know, it didn't really matter if we won or not, but we just, you know, we really felt gratitude that somebody had kind of watched and loved our stuff, you know. And I have to thank Apple as well, because they got behind the show so much, and they pushed us for awards, and they made us do press and all this kind of stuff. And they really love Ted Lasso. I mean, it's done very well for them, but they also love it because they love the show. You know, they're wild about the show. And so it was thanks to them as well. But yeah, it was amazing. I mean, I got to come to LA for the awards 3 times. I got to do press. It was just wonderful. And it was nice to meet, you know, some American designers who I don't normally get to meet. I got nominated for an ADG award, which is the you know, production design union in the States as well. So I got to go to a party with a load of designers there, made a few new friends, which was great as well. So it's really gone spectacularly global, which I didn't expect, you know, for when it was initially mooted as about being a half-hour comedy about football. Was a bit of an understatement, really. And probably a reason not a lot of people took the job at the start. But you know, I kind of knew at the start that it was going to be good because I loved the script so much, and I thought the scripts were so good. But nothing in the realms of what happened, you know, over the 3 seasons. And it's been such a ride in a way, and we all miss each other very much. You know, we connect on the internet. We've been chatting during the Euros because we all had a kind of fantasy football thing going on our WhatsApp group. But you know, I think I miss all those guys and seeing them and having fun, and them coming to me with crazy ideas to do next. And I really hope we can do that or something else together. It would be just nice to work at the moment. I haven't worked for a year because it's been so dire over here in the UK. The industry's just kind of collapsed for some reason, but hopefully it will get started again soon. But yeah, I mean, it's weird as well because I went straight from Ted Lasso on to do a World War II drama, which hasn't come out yet. But so it's a completely different world to go to. So it was nice in a way, having done 3 seasons, to then go and do something completely different, because I think I needed a change. But now, like 2 years down the line, I think, oh yeah, you know, I do miss it quite a lot, and I miss the people because they're all lovely, and I miss my team. So it'd be nice to go back and revisit, but who knows? Or do something different with them. It'd be great to do something different if I get the chance. But we'll see.
Again, and we appreciate you joining us today too. That we appreciate all the time that you gave to us, and all the. I know, like, if Bonnie and I were super interested in what you were saying, that Mike will also be when he listens, and then anybody else that's going to watch or listen to this is going to be super interested about it, because anybody that likes the show or has fallen in love with the show, has, like you said with the scripts, or just like the general feeling on set or in production and whatnot, had this like certain like magic to it. And not like, even we did a panel at a Comic-Con here, like, in that in and of itself, all the people that came to that felt like a group therapy to it and had like a certain magic to it.
Yeah.
So I know I at least speak for myself that, like, we appreciate all the work that you did on it and also joining us. And I'm also super jealous of the Beats AFC Richmond. That was our gift from Apple. Yeah, those are awesome. But yeah, thank you again for coming on, and We appreciate you so much.
Thank you for enjoying the show and keeping up the kind of interest in it, really, because it's things like you guys that, you know, keep people interested and get new people watching it as well, which is just still astounding. You know, I look on Apple and I think, hold on, it's 2 in the current chart, and I just think, how is that still happening? It's like 2 years later. Yeah. It's amazing, and but it's really lovely. You know, it's really great. And if anybody has questions, you know, if your audience have specific questions, I'm very happy to answer them if they want to send them in. You know, I know I probably talk about the same things all the time, but it's quite good if people ask me different questions as well about, you know, stuff they're interested in, niche stuff, because I quite like that as well. So if you want to invite people to send questions, I can talk about those as well sometime.
Yeah, people can do that. Like, they either can like send them to you directly, or like anytime we post episodes on our website or on the YouTube comments, you can do it there too. But like,
I wondered if you were doing a particular episode for. Do you do them for these talks, or?
So like, we'll have like these interviews like this, but then we've been doing an episode by episode rewatch as well too. And then these will kind of get intersected in between there. So like we've spoken with you, we talked with Kip recently, who was the SFX like audio, and then we talked with Mary Roscoe as well.
Kip's a very interesting guy.
Both of you are very fun to speak. I mean, Mary was fun to speak with as well too. Like, you've all had like your own kind of like great stories that it was cool to hear, and we appreciated talking to you.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much. This was delightful. Thank you.
And we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Nice
to see you. Bye.
So until next time, folks, be curious, not judgmental, and keep rewatching. This is Ted Lasso signing off. As the man once said, the harder you work, the luckier you get.